Welcome to the student workflow. What you can do is scroll down and see the yellow bar across the top. If you haven't already opened the slides, go ahead and open them now just to have them on hand. Those are your crew scenario slides. So if you are in a synchronous session with me, we're using those crew slide decks and we're going through and we're doing the group work. If you're doing this asynchronously on your own, you can still open those and preview them and see what we do as a group, but you could just work through everything in here as an individual or as a crew. It's up to you. Just below the video are the 7 steps you take. So we call the podcast process. The stage you're in now is student workflow, where we're preparing. Then after this, we're going to record. So we need to get ready to record. So in order to do so, you go through these steps. Now, step 1 you can do rhetorically. I do have a document here that you can open, but you can just look at these and ask these questions to yourself, or if you're working with others in a group, just have a little conversation. Why are you podcasting? What format are you going to use? Who's your target audience? How long will each episode be? What's the content going to be? How are we going to engage your audience? How is your podcast different from everyone else's podcast? How is it niche? So just think about these things. You're trying to come up with a concept of your podcast. Then you move into step 2, the format. If you have a need to, go ahead and open up that format document. If you don't need to open it, just look at the formats and select which one you're going to use. When we first started off, we went through experimentation. We went through a phase where we used a couple of different formats until we rested on what we're using right now. So don't feel as though you pick one, you are stuck with it. You can switch along the way. I wouldn't recommend doing too many iterations or changes while you're formatting your podcast and figuring everything out. Try to stick with the one you have, but if you do need to change, it's okay. And then step 3, brainstorming the anatomy of the podcast. This you need to open up. This is what you want to turn in. This is what we need to see. So go ahead and open up podcast anatomy document. It's going to force a copy. You're going to go through all of these details as far as the title, the description, the artwork, podcast season. What you want to do is open that spreadsheet as well. I know you're like, wait, I have slides open, I have the website open, I have this other document open, now a spreadsheet. I promise it'll be the last one. Just have the spreadsheet there during the whole time you are working on the podcast challenge. And as you have inspiration, as you have ideas for podcast shows or episodes, just put them on there in a brainstorm fashion. Just put it somewhere. If you want to look at dates and things like that later, we can worry about all that. Guests, if you have ideas for guests, put their names on there. Just keep putting ideas on that. So when you are ready to actually schedule your first season, you'll be having a little bit of a jump start because you'll have some notes on there as you were going through the challenge. So you're going to look at your episodes, bumpers, we talk about show notes. Step 4, you want to now start getting, you talked about the show, which is different than the episodes. All the episodes are related back into the show's theme or topic or whatever your concept is. But your show has artwork, has a name. Then each individual episode could have its own artwork, could have obviously its own name or title of the episode and its description of the episode, which is different than the description of your podcast show. So we wanted to delineate and understand the difference of show and episode. So here is where you're in step 4, looking at your first episode and brainstorming the content of what you're going to do in that episode. Step 5 is your talking points, right? What are you going to actually say during the podcast? You can use that document if you want to, or use your own approach, your own type of way to. I'd like to think of them as bullet points. We don't have scripts because when we have scripts, we kind of sound scripted. So we have bullet points so our conversations are more natural, but you figure out what works best for you. Step 6 are the bumpers, and you're just going to have a little bit of a bumper. You don't have to create an intro and outro, at least an intro bumper. So your audience knows, again, your description, who you are, the name of the show, who are the hosts, how can we get in contact with you if we need to, what is everything about. So a bumper of some sorts. That's why you want to listen to some to get some ideas. And you're going to wrap up with just rehearsing a little bit, dry run at your bumper and your actual episode. When we get to the studio and we're recording, we want to make that efficient. And we don't want to spend time in the studio practicing and making changes and things like that. All that needs to be done. When you get to the studio, you hit record and you go. That's the game plan. It makes editing much easier, and if you're having to share studio space or microphones or equipment, if you're doing it with the students, think about the efficiency of recording. So when you're done with everything here, doesn't need to take too much time, but you can put some time into this. It's up to you. Last thing I'll say is that whatever you're working on, try to make it real world. Try to work on something you can actually use. If you're working as a crew, pick one of you that has something that you really want to do with podcasting and say, I really want to do this in real life. Can we work on this as our crew project? All right? Don't let it be fictitious. Do something real that you can actually turn around and use and put out there. Right? And then when you're done with all that, then you'll go to the top and you'll hit recording, and then you'll be ready for the recording introduction and lesson. All right. Hope everything goes well with your preparing. If you need any support or help, just raise your hand or shoot an email. We'll get in touch with you as soon as possible.